Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's panel. Today is the interview panel for the Veterans Florida Virtual Expo. My name is Colby Livingston from Veterans Florida, and I have with me today two great subject matter experts when it comes to interviewing. I have Heather Diriu, and then I also have Kathy McClack. Heather, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Excited to be joining you today. I'm Heather Diriu, or HD as a lot of people call me. I've been working in HR since 2006 and definitely have a passion for the recruiting and talent acquisition side of HR. So excited to share some tips for your resume, the interview, and of course, actually getting that job so that you wake up every day with a new career going, I get to go to work. So excited for your questions today.
Absolutely. And Kathy, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Sure, of course. Thank you. And I'm also excited to be here with you guys, and thank you for having me. I started out my career in human resources and helped a government contractor double in size in the 4 years that I was there. And then just by chance ended up in executive search. So I was a recruiter for the remainder of my career until I joined Vets to PM, where I am now. And Heather, I'm not going to say the year I started because it's a little bit before yours. So I don't want to give up my age. Anyway, so with Vets to PM, we help transitioning military members achieve meaningful careers. And we do that through certification training, and I run the career and talent services. So I help with resume writing, LinkedIn optimization, interview skills with people who are transitioning. And then I work with companies in talent acquisition, trying to help facilitate those interviews and get people noticed and interviewed and on the job, so that corporate America can have better retention rates and veterans can go straight into a meaningful job and not have to flounder. So thanks.
Well, I'm glad you both are here today. It's very exciting to have you. So let's get started with a kind of a very basic question. Someone's gone online, or they found a position they like, they've applied, they've submitted their resume, and they've had an interview scheduled for themselves. What is the point of the interview? What is the goal of the interview? If you'd like to speak from the company side or the interviewee side, feel free. Kathy, if you would like to start it off, feel free.
Sure. I think it's to tell the rest of the story, because more than likely, if you have applied online, the recruiter has seen your resume, obviously shared it with the hiring manager, and sometimes they'll do an initial interview with the recruiter before it goes to the hiring manager. But either way, they saw something in your resume, keywords matched, something worked to get you noticed by a human, which is great. Your resume spoke to them, and I'm sure that the first thing they did was check your LinkedIn profile. So and I always say LinkedIn can tell the rest of the story, but nothing can tell the whole story like you can. So I see the initial interview as they're going to gather particulars from you to kind of gauge whether you're a fit for that job and what that job entails. But it also gives you the opportunity to expand beyond your resume and your LinkedIn profile to let your breadth of experience shine through and in relation to the job that you're seeking.
That's great. And Heather, did you have anything to add to that?
The only thing I'll add is it's also to see the culture fit and for you to interview the company. So everything might match on paper and the resume looks great or the LinkedIn looks great, but it's finding out, how did you actually work in that position? How did you work with others? How could you work with the organization and the different people that you'll have on your new team? And is that the right culture fit? Do you have the right personality fit? So it's really important to show that body language that you're excited to be there, that you're an open and warm person, if that's what the company culture is. And we certainly hope that it is to some effect. But it's also your opportunity to interview that organization to see if it's a fit on your side. It is a candidate marketplace right now. So you really are in control of your destiny at this point. And what is that next step in your career? So make sure that you're also asking them questions so that you feel entirely comfortable about that organization and that possibility.
And I'm sitting here nodding. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Heather, I really love what you said, because interviewing is a two-way street, and so many people get so excited about the job and they want to make a good impression, and especially coming out of the military where you haven't been interviewing, you're not used to interviewing for a job, and everything is focused on, am I going to be a good fit? Are they going to want me? But an interview is 100% a two-way street, and you are interviewing that company, because you don't even if you get a job offer, you don't have to take it.
Right.
So assessing them is just as important as them assessing you.
And I agree completely, especially being a veteran myself, coming out of that kind of active service mindset into the civilian sector or state sector or government sector. A big portion of it is finding that career path that you would enjoy. So part of it is asking those right questions to make sure, oh, is this a good fit for me? So let's get started with the preparation portion. Interview scheduled, you have your date, you know who you're interviewing with, you know the company. What are some things that you would recommend for a candidate in order to prepare for that interview? Kathy, if you want to start.
Yeah, they looked you up on LinkedIn, so you should be looking them up on LinkedIn. So first of all, you should go to the website and learn everything you can about the company. A good place to also go is to their press room. Most companies, depending on how big they are, but they'll usually have a page on their website with news, what stories have been in the news about them, which will tell you the most recent information about that company. Have they been selling off part of their company? Have they been acquiring companies? Have they been promoting people? Have they, it'll tell you a lot about the company. And it's really nice to show a tidbit in an interview that you've done your research on the company. They're going to know you're invested in this opportunity. So that is key. And looking up the people that you'll be interviewing with on LinkedIn, so you know a little bit of something about them. And if you have something in common, maybe you can bring that up. And again, it shows that you've done your homework to prepare for that interview.
Absolutely. And Heather, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
Sure. So know how they make money and how you are going to contribute to that bottom line. Are you going to be bringing in revenue for the organization? Is there a way for you to add cost savings to the organization? But know how they're making money and how your position, if you accept it, will contribute to that bottom line and the ROI for the organization. I'd also say look at their competitors so that when you go into that interview, you can ask, well, how are you different from X, Y, and Z? Or what is your employee value proposition and how does that vary from this other organization? It's very popular for the interviewer to ask, where else are you interviewing? Where else are you applying? So to know the difference between this organization and that organization and why you might be leaning towards one or the other.
Gotcha.
And
Now, go ahead, Kathy. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I keep jumping back in.
No, you're good.
At VetsFIM, we deal every day with transitioning military members. And one of the things that we focus on so much in our company is to learn the language of business, learn the language of the job, learn the language of the industry. It's really important that you, when you're talking in this interview and listening in this interview, that you're understanding what they're talking about, because they're probably going to be speaking 100% civilian language. And if you don't understand, you mentioned, Heather, ROI. Do you know what ROI is? That's return on investment. But many people in the military aren't using that term, don't use that term, P&L. I talked to a veteran yesterday and I was talking about this subject and I mentioned P&L. And when I was done talking about what I was talking about, he said, well, is P&L project and logistics? No, it's profit and loss. So you really have to know the language of business. So study job descriptions, get familiar with, the language that people use in business. Soak that up everywhere you can, because if you just walk in and say, I'm a leader, well, a leader is a part of management. It's not, a leader in the civilian world is an executive. So you have to know how you're using language and you have to know the right language. So that's, speak to everybody who is not in the military and ask them to talk to you about the language of business. Get it anywhere you can, and that will help you a lot.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, when you're speaking and answering those questions, know that you are providing answers in a way that the civilians will understand and that you're not using the acronyms either, or that you're able to translate your wonderful military experience into the civilian life. And what does that look like? And how is this related to customer service or overcoming obstacles or different ways so that they can truly understand, okay, you do have that skill set and here's the transferable skills.
And you can go on Google and type "what is,"
Mm-hmm.
and any term you see on a job description or on their company page that you don't understand, go to dictionary.com, go to thesaurus.com, go to Google and type "what is" and type the term, and you'll begin learning.
Now, tying it back into kind of the military aspect and the veteran preparation, right? A lot of the military is right time, right uniform, just being in the proper place in the proper position. What would you say is some materials that someone should bring to a physical interview? That way they are properly prepared. How should they dress? Is it okay to wear a complete suit and tie? Is these things that they should study beforehand? Heather, if you want to start with that one.
Sure. Well, like any good party, never come empty-handed. So make sure that you are bringing copies of your resume. They probably already have copies of it because you have applied online or gone through whatever systems, but it's always nice to have a hard, tangible copy because there might be somebody else brought into that interview that hasn't reviewed your resume already. I still like to recommend that you do it on a nice, heavier paper. So it's not just your standard paper that you might do your black and white copies on. Have something that has a little bit of a thicker texture to it so it really stands out. Make sure that it's a professional font. If you want some colors or other things on there, that's fine. If that's, the type of position and the company culture of what you're going into, but make sure it's a professional, very readable resume. I always say dress for the job that you want, not the one that you've got. I think it's always better to overdress rather than underdress, especially for an initial interview. But when you're speaking with somebody from that organization, if you do an initial phone screen or maybe talking with a recruiter, you can absolutely ask them what would be the appropriate thing to wear for this job. I have the pleasure of working with Sarasota County government, and we have jobs that are interior office jobs where people might be business casual or suits. We have a lot of people working in the field where sometimes shorts or cargo pants are very appropriate. But finding, what's the best for that interview and what's best for that position moving forward.
I agree 100%. And, even amp it up a tiny bit from what they tell you. So if they say, oh, they're all, business casual. Well, that could be a shirt like this. I have my logo on it, which you can't see, but I would suggest if they say business casual, maybe wear a button down shirt without a tie and don't have a jacket. So that's a little bit nicer than business casual, maybe for some people. So always err, like Heather said, on the side of being overdressed. And one other thing I want to add about what you should bring to an interview is a notepad and a pen. And on that notepad, you should have 3 questions, because at the end of the interview, they are surely going to ask you, do you have any questions? And based on your research on the website or information that you've gathered about that company, that you can come up with unique questions that they wouldn't typically have covered in the interview, because you don't want to be stuck with, oh man, they've answered all my questions. And I just say, no, you answered everything. You want to show that you're super, super extra prepared. So I would definitely bring a couple of questions written down, and it's okay to refer to that. And finally, another thing, if you are a transitioning military member, I have a website where you can go and get pre-certified for the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. And if you do that, you can print off your letter that shows them, gives them a code that they can go in on the website and look at what your tax credit would be if they hire you. It's something that has to happen on the front end of, they have to take care of this before you start working for them to get this tax credit for hiring a veteran, which is technically an underemployed, category for the Department of Labor. So that can be an advantage that somebody else interviewing for the job isn't able to offer them. So I would have that letter printed out and hand it to them at the end of the interview.
Absolutely. And taking advantage of every possibility out there for veterans and active service members is very important. And that's kind of why organizations like Vets to PM and Veterans for to exist, is to help veterans understand, hey, this is what you're eligible for. This is what you should use to help yourself out. You did mention something interesting, and I just kind of want to jump ahead, if we will, to that. You mentioned 3 questions, coming prepared with 3 questions. Do you have any examples of great questions that individuals should bring with them? Is there ones that I always recommend at least having this question in hand, or is it just kind of as you go, you find out for yourself?
I typically tell them to look at the website and, like I said before, that room about the news that shows news about the company. And it's a great place to come up with a question that has to do with some newsworthy thing that this company has gone through. So it's not a standard question, it's something that they have to find that's relevant today for that company. So that's what I suggest.
Gotcha. Now, let's jump to the actual interview portion itself. The individuals come in, they've sat down for the interview, they've greeted everyone there. Usually the very first thing right off the bat is someone asks interviewee, tell me about yourself. They're looking for that elevator pitch, that, hey, straight to the point, but also hitting the highlights about yourself and why you're there for that opportunity. Heather, would you like to kind of expand upon what the company might be looking for and some good things for the interviewee to highlight during this portion?
Absolutely. So keep it professional. Imagine it is a 30-second elevator pitch. And if you don't know the reason why it's called an elevator pitch, the idea is that if you got on the ground floor with somebody in an elevator, by the time you reach the top floor, if they asked, tell me about yourself, or you only had 30 seconds to spend with that person, they know who you are, what you're about, and how they might be able to help you. So those are really the three keys. Being able to introduce yourself. What have you done in the past? What are you looking to do in the future? And what skills do you bring to the table? So this can be your military experience. It could be education. It could be different facets that you've learned in personal studies or continuing education. You might have been a fighter pilot before, but you've been studying human resources. You need to make sure that you're making that connection for people so that they know, oh, they're interested in HR, or already have this certificate, already have this experience. They don't want to be a fighter pilot anymore. So make sure that you're making that jump for them from point A to point B.
Absolutely. And Kathy, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, when I write resumes, I always say the first half of the first page of the resume, the top half of that first page, is speaking to how you can ease the pain of the hiring manager. So, you want to be a project manager, you have this experience. So your header across the front top of your resume, your summary, and your areas of expertise all speak forward to that position. So that should play into your elevator pitch. It's not historical, oh, well, I was a fighter pilot. It was just like Heather said, how it has to show how you're going to solve their problems. So you have to relate it to what you want to do moving forward. That's super important. And, you can practice it and write it down and memorize it. I mean, at Vets PM, our mission statement is to help transitioning military members achieve meaningful, lucrative post-service careers. And I help corporate America solve their talent crises by hiring veterans, which in turn helps veterans achieve meaningful, lucrative post-service careers. That took me one floor, maybe 1.5 floors to get that out, right? So you have to know it, and you have to memorize it, and you have to feel it when you speak it.
I was going to say confidence is the biggest portion there. So being comfortable with the words coming out of your mouth. So rehearse it, say it out loud to yourself, say it out loud to other people, and really believe what you're saying. So make it personal to you and something that you're passionate about.
How do you find that balance of sharing the proper information and not oversharing? What do you look for? Where do you look for, like, finding that line of, okay, I think I overshared there. I shouldn't do that.
Well, I think 30 seconds is a good time frame to keep in mind. When people say, tell me about yourself, they don't need to know where you were born. They don't need to know everything that you've done in your life. It really is, maybe the past 10-year snapshot, but most importantly, where you are now and where you want to go. And then, like Kathy said, how that can relate to that organization. So you might have, let's say, the first 20 seconds of your elevator pitch is pretty standard. Maybe those last 10 seconds you personalize for each company that you're interviewing with. So it really is a direct connection there.
And I was going to also say silence is golden. When you finish your elevator pitch, stop talking. In fact, that's a really good thing for all across the whole entire interview is answer the question and stop talking. Some people don't feel comfortable with that moment of silence, and so they want to just keep going and going, and that's where stuff breaks down. So, be conversational, be friendly, be confident. But when you've answered the question, stop talking.
Absolutely. And that's something that individuals have to kind of get used to, is it's okay to have a little bit of silence. It's not like you're going to sit there for a minute and a half in silence. The conversation will keep moving.
Exactly. And if they want to know more, they will certainly prompt you to say, can you expand on that? Can you share more details if they want more information on that particular topic?
Gotcha. Now, for the next portion, usually after the tell me about yourself, there's usually a portion or someone there during the interview. They will go into the content of the resume itself, and they'll start breaking down, okay, this and this, but they'll start asking kind of questions, whether they be situational questions, behavioral questions, or personality-based questions to help get an understanding of the candidate. Is there certain types of methods or techniques that you would recommend to a interviewee that would help them out in answering these questions? I know a common one is the STAR method.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of goes along with the resume too. You have a situation, how did you handle that situation, and what was the result of that, how you handled it. So know your resume well, and have in your mind, the story that goes along with those accomplishments. When I do a resume, it's an overview of the position, it's a few key responsibilities, and then a couple of key achievements. And when you do your resume, those achievements, should be achievements that are as much relatable to what you want to do moving forward as possible. So hopefully the content that you have on your resume that they're going to be asking you about is going to be relevant, to what you're doing moving forward. And if you created your resume in that way, then it should be easy to talk about it in that way as well.
Right.
Now-
Like Kathy said, it's a story. So have a beginning, middle, and end, and have an idea of what you're going to say before you start speaking, so that you have a beginning, middle, and end, and can wrap it all up with a nice little bow at the end instead of just stopping mid-trail.
And I understand also, like, we deal a lot with project managers. So somebody might have had logistics or materials management or aviation maintenance background in the military, and they want to be a project manager. Well, every industry has project managers, right? So it doesn't matter what, we have pharmaceuticals, they have project managers. We have retail, they have project managers.
Mhm.
So the industry itself doesn't matter. So if your accomplishments don't say project manager, you were still managing projects to accomplish your goals. So if you're going for a project manager role, know that vernacular. And then when you're speaking about your accomplishments, you can use terms like, well, I led a team, or so it's all about, it takes an immense amount of studying and practice, but once it all clicks for you, you'll get it, and so practice with whomever, talking about your resume. And
Now-
then you'll feel more comfortable when you go in there to.
You did mention something interesting that I'd like to tie back to kind of the veterans and active service members. A lot of times, or sometimes, you'll find that individuals will have a hard time talking about their personal accomplishments. They'll refer to it as we, or my company, or my unit. What advice would you give someone to help drive past that and talk about themselves and highlight their abilities and their skill set?
Well, what I do is I say, we as a group accomplished this main objective, the strategy of, that whole initiative. But you played a singular part in some of that. So you have to really pinpoint what was my responsibility. My responsibility was making sure we resourced this project or this program effectively. How did I do that? I led 4 people who were responsible for this, that, and the other thing. And collectively, we then accomplished this. So you have to really drill it down to what your personal part in that was, so that you can articulate it.
Right. And that's the perfect combination that Kathy mentioned, because it shows the team aspect and how you can work with others and accomplish wonderful things together, but then having the personal side of, this is what I did, or here's how I contributed.
That's great. Any particular do's and don'ts that you would recommend? Anything that you have from your own personal experience that you would like to highlight for individuals when they go to interview, as far as the interview portion, the content resume?
Aside from just know your resume well, that's really important. And one thing I wanted to back up on, Heather said at the very beginning of this interview part of the conversation, is to be professional. When I used to coach people when I was in talent acquisition, not talent acquisition, in executive search as a recruiter, and I would try to prep people for their interviews. You know, at one point, I didn't tell somebody, don't chew gum, don't lean back in your chair, don't, you know, be bouncing back and forth, don't cuss, you know, don't tap the table, don't, you know, just being professional. What does that mean? It means don't chew gum, don't cuss, don't lean back like you're relaxing in a chair, you know, act like you would, you know, in front of your grandma at church. I don't know how else to describe it, but that's so important, because body language. And if you're leaning back in the chair and you're, you know, got your arm up on the thing and you're rocking back and forth, you're not looking like you're taking it seriously or that you're a serious individual. You know, so all of you have to really pay attention to every little thing you're doing, and just, you know, but on the flip side of that, don't be stiff and at attention either. So
Yeah.
it's a balance. But being professional is really key to, that's one thing that can knock you out regardless of what you say.
Yeah, I'll add 2 items there. One, make sure your cell phone is off, not just vibrate, off, because even on vibrate, it's going to make noise. It's going to distract you. It's going to distract your interviewers. It's not professional, and it makes it look like you're not prepared, or again, like you're not taking it seriously. We've actually had people take phone calls during interviews. Definitely don't do that. But if your phone's off, you're not going to accept that phone call. So leave it off or leave it in the car, just so you don't even have that distraction around you. Also, don't lie. That should also be, you know, a basics 101 lesson there, but do not lie about anything. You know you the best, you know what you've done, but if somebody asks you a question about your military experience or other professional experience or something, and you don't know the answer to it, that's okay. It's much better just to say, you know, I don't know the answer to that, or I don't recall, rather than coming up with a lie, or, you know, trying to pull at strings of something. So do not lie and turn that cell phone off.
And that is so true. With running SkillBridge, where really it's a little bit different than just placing someone, because we are involved with the host company who's hosting our interns throughout their whole internship. And so we're getting a lot of interaction with the companies and with the interns for the first couple of months when they're on that job. And I think the one thing that's coming up the most is the military person, is the veteran, or the soon-to-be veteran, is afraid to ask for help, or afraid to say, I don't know how to do this, and who should I talk to, or how should I solve this problem? And that's okay. You don't have to take an order and figure it out. There are people in your department, in your organization, who can answer questions for you. So don't suffer in silence. Ask the question, and it's very much okay to say, I don't know, I'll find out and let you know. Or ask somebody for help.
So you did mention questions, and this ties back to something Kathy brought up earlier in our conversation. You mentioned questions to have there at the interview. Usually at this portion, someone will say, do you have any questions for me? One that I've always recommended is asking them something, or some key aspect of the normal day-to-day operation of the position. That's something that you could always have in your back pocket. One I always throw out is, what does a normal work day look for me? What does a normal Tuesday look like for me? What can I expect if I was to get this position? That's one that I recommend. Do you guys have any that y'all recommend to individuals when they're applying for or doing the interview process?
I also suggest that they ask a question about what would a successful candidate look like in 90 days or 6 months. So it shows that you're forward thinking, that you're going to be with the organization, and to start setting up that game plan for success. You know, does that mean meeting with the directors of the organization, or doing one-on-ones with your new team if you're going to be a manager, or taking certain courses or certifications? So getting that information, and to make sure that that's lining up on both sides for that time period.
And also, what will this lead to down the road with the company? So, you know, you want to grow with the company, you want to show that you want to stay with the company, but likely you're not going to be in that same job forever. So succession planning, whatever you want to call it, what does the position lead to? What opportunities come up within the organization down?
And that's a great one to ask, Kathy, especially coming from the military where it's understood there is a succession plan. There's an upward mobility within the organization. Whereas some organizations, when you interview, this is it. This is the cap where we are looking for one HR person to hold this spot. Salary is capped at this spot, but we're looking to hire at this spot. So it's kind of understood this is where you'll be at. That's a great point to bring up. When you get to the end of the interview, you ask the questions, what is something that you would recommend to someone before they leave? What is something that they should absolutely know before they leave that room?
I always like to ask about the next steps as that final question. It shows that you're interested in the position and that you want to find out, what is expected next. Will there be additional interviews? Are they interviewing other candidates? When do they expect to have an answer? Obviously, you're not going to go into that litany of questions, but you can certainly do something a little simpler of, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed meeting with all of you, learning more about the organization, how I could be part of the team here. Can you share some insights about the next steps or when you think you might have a decision about this position? That way you're kind of closing the deal and letting them know, I want this job, and when could I expect to hear back from you, or when should I follow up?
Yeah, exactly. And reiterate that you are very interested in moving forward in the process. Absolutely.
That's.
I also get the
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I get the business cards from everyone that you meet with so that you can do a follow-up thank you note. I suggest a handwritten one because people don't get mail anymore, or at least don't get non-junk mail on a regular basis. So a handwritten thank you note really goes a long way, or at least an email. Again, just reiterating that statement of, thank you for your time, very interested in joining the team.
Yeah, I like the handwritten aspect of it. If you've got their business cards, and especially if they answer the question about what comes next, if you think there's enough time, if they're going to be making a decision in a couple of days, send an email. But if it's going to go on for a week or two, definitely, a handwritten note. Nobody does that anymore. That's really special.
Is there an acceptable time after the interview to do a follow-up? Is there something to say, hey, if they tell you 2 weeks and it's been 3, can you just assume that you didn't get the position, or is it okay to do a follow-up just to see where they're at in the process?
I say it's okay to do a follow-up. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your thank you letters or emails should go out that afternoon or the next day.
Okay.
At the latest, I think. Heather, what do you think?
Follow-up is great. Just do it in a professional manner. If they expected to have an answer in 2 weeks and you wait 2.5 or 3 weeks for your follow-up, absolutely. Things happen. So best laid plans might be that we're making a decision on Friday or in 2 weeks and somebody's out of town or somebody's sick or another candidate came in. Maybe you're the silver medalist and they've offered that position to the gold medalist, but the gold medalist turns them down and then they'll be calling you afterwards. So to show that you're still interested in that role is a good thing.
And there's no shame in being the silver medalist.
Right.
If you made it to second spot, they liked you a lot, but the person who's the gold medalist just probably had something else in addition to what you had to offer. So there's no shame in that happening, that scenario.
Absolutely, Kathy. And you did mention something interesting is just being that second person in line, or you just missed the opportunity. How would you recommend someone going about, or is it professional for someone to go out and ask for that feedback on how they can improve their candidacy going forward for other positions? Is there a way that you recommend for someone to kind of seek that information, or is it just kind of understood, okay, I'll just have to kind of look within myself and go back in and see how I can improve myself?
I think it's okay to ask. I don't think you're going to get a lot of feedback. I think companies don't want to say things they're not supposed to say, or whatever the case may be. When you're a recruiter and you're a third party and you're not with the company, you can seek feedback and the company might be really honest with you. And then for their own edification and improvement, you can somehow soften, what, if there is something that's hard to talk about. But I think most of the time, if you ask someone within the company, the hiring manager, what could I have done different? they're probably not gonna, they're probably just gonna say to you, well, it's just that the other candidate that we hired was a better fit for the job.
Something very generic. Yeah.
What do you think about that, Heather?
I'd agree. It's definitely professional to ask, but don't expect to get a lot of feedback. It depends on the organization and what the differences were between the two candidates. So if you are the silver medalist, but the gold medalist had a, PMP or another certification or a couple more years of experience, that would be feedback that we would certainly be willing to share, because that's a very hard and fast, okay, they had 5 years of experience, you only had 3, or they had this certification or this degree or whatever. But that's feedback that you would then be able to take and know, okay, if I get this degree or I get this certification or I do this training, I would be a more eligible candidate in the future with this organization or another organization.
All right. Well, guys, that is all my questions. Anything that you want to touch on before we conclude the panel today? Any last minute recommendations for our veterans and service members who are watching?
Don't get discouraged. It is a good market right now for people getting jobs. And I think if you take your job search super seriously and really put the effort and the time in at the beginning, as you go along, you'll be more comfortable. Most people don't get the first job they interview for. Don't let that discourage you. The right company and the right opportunity and the right fit for you is going to come along. But do keep an open mind and listen and pay attention to any feedback you get, or just so you can continuously assess and honestly make sure that you're applying for positions that make sense for you. If it's okay to reach for stretch positions, but really know where you fit and interview for those positions, and it'll probably go a little bit quicker than if you don't.
Yeah, be selective, like Kathy said, and really figure out what you want to do, what you're passionate about, what organizations are going to be the right fit for you. I'd also suggest networking. So if there are associations or trade organizations that are specific to that industry that you'd like to move into, it's amazing who you can meet and what opportunities might be coming down the pipeline that haven't been advertised yet, but because they've met you and started a relationship with you, they can make some introductions or get your foot in the door. And, as we talked about earlier, don't be afraid to ask for help. So I know Veterans Florida and a lot of other organizations offer help with your resume, with interviewing and other things. So please use those resources available to you so that you're setting yourself up for success.
And you can also connect with people from the companies that you're interested in. Connect with people who would be peers, connect with people who would be a step above your peer. And, usually you'll find some people who are very happy to talk to you and talk about their experience with the company. Maybe you find a veteran who works at that company, and they can talk to you about their experience. And usually when people talk to you and you have a good conversation, they're then emotionally invested in you being successful. And they might be the person who's going to hand your resume to someone, or know of a job that hasn't been posted yet, or who knows what, but they can help you. That's what networking is all about.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for being here today. I really enjoyed it. We got a lot of good information out there for everyone watching. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Veterans Florida or Kathy or Heather. We'll have the information posted here at the end as far as contact information. Again, thank you both very much.